The U.S. Operation Midnight Hammer, aimed at denuclearizing Iran, has sent ripples across the geopolitical landscape. What does Beijing's reaction tell us about the limit of its power projection? NTD's Carrie Dunst spoke with Colonel Grant ניושם, a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy, for insight.
Thanks for joining us this morning, Colonel ניושם. How did Beijing initially respond to Israel's surprise strike, and then how did it evolve as the U.S. entered into the fray and neutralized the 3 nuclear facilities?
Well, from fairly early on, the Chinese blamed Israel for all the trouble, and they would make calls for de-escalation, for ceasefire, etc. But you see their response has been something very typical, which is when they're presented with a big surprise, they don't quite know how to respond. So it has been a lot of platitudinous statements, as I said, condemning Israel, calling for a ceasefire, and they haven't really insinuated themselves into the activities in the Middle East, partly because I think they don't have much influence, they don't have much credibility, and they don't have too many sticks to wield unless it's on Iran. And you could tell Iran, look, we're not going to buy any of your oil, and China buys 90% of it. But I don't think they're willing to do that. So you're seeing the real limits on Chinese power projection capability, but particularly their influence. And even now, their activity, it looks like somebody who's on their back foot, making statements, trying to sort of bring your allies together here, as such as they are. But they don't really have a very obvious thought-out strategy or plan for dealing with this. And that's not surprising, say, given the way the Chinese communist regime operates.
Do you think U.S. backing of Israel against Iran has any deterrence capabilities or qualities in the way that the Asia-Pacific theater is arranged, with Beijing bullying some of its neighbors?
Well, I think it does. There was always a sense in some quarters, and I think in China as well, that while America was Israel's ally, that there were such limits on it. And there was a point at which the Americans would not go and really wouldn't back Israel in a serious fight. Well, this recent event involving the B-2s and the strikes on the nuclear facilities really suggests otherwise. So what you saw on display was a display of capability, the U.S. military's sort of ability to do things that are often pretty good, and also the will. This administration had the will to stick its neck out and get in with Israel in these specific attacks. And those are two things that apply to any theater, not just to the Middle East. And China must wonder, is this a different America than we were thinking about? Because you hear it said by the Chinese for a long time, America's on the decline, we're on the rise. And well, B-2s pulling off this operation suggests America may not be finished just yet. And China should have some second thoughts about this.